in the Circuit Court of the 18th Judicial Circuit in and for Seminole County, Florida, State of Florida versus George Zimmerman. Verdict: we, the jury, find George Zimmerman not guilty.
Zimmerman found not guilty late Saturday. Here to discuss the verdict is defense attorney Gretchen von Helms and attorney Cezanne Oegar as well. Both of you, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Cezanne, you predicted this last week. You said you didn't think that he would be found guilty.
Right. Yeah. The evidence just didn't establish it. You know, there was reasonable doubt. We never established whose voice it was on the phone call, who was on top, and who threw the last punch or the first punch. And really, the evidence tended to go in favor of George Zimmerman. So legally, I think we got the correct result. Whether emotionally you agree, legally we got it right.
Gretchen, you feel the same way with that?
Oh, absolutely. There just wasn't enough evidence to convict him here, especially of the murder charge, and the jury did absolutely the right thing. This is not a popularity contest. This isn't let's build civil rights policy in one criminal case. What the jury had to do was the hard work, roll up their sleeves. That's what American justice is all about, is looking at each little piece of evidence and see how that fits in with the law. And then if there's doubt, and that doubt is reasonable, you must find the defendant not guilty.
Along those same tunes, we heard from, on a national broadcast this morning, the attorney for Trayvon Martin, and here's what he had to say about his rights. Listen in here.
George had an absolute right to be where he was, and he also had a right to see where Trayvon Martin was. People want to say that it was improper profiling, but the reality is, with the circumstances that night and circumstances unrelated to Trayvon Martin, I think George had a reason to be concerned. And when the officer told him not to follow, there's no evidence whatsoever that he continued to follow. But obviously, the two parties met.
Well, there you heard from him. So where do we go from here? There's two options here.
Right, that's Zimmerman's attorney, not Trayvon's attorney.
I'm sorry if I confused that. Yeah, Zimmerman's attorney. But where do we go from here? Because there are two different areas of law here. There's one civil, and then there's from the federal standpoint. Why don't we address the civil first from possibly Trayvon Martin's family's standpoint?
So where we're at right now is Trayvon Martin's family, and Mr. Crump came on over this weekend saying that they were considering bringing a wrongful death cause of action. And we saw this in the O.J. case, where O.J. was found not guilty criminally, but he was found liable for the death of his ex-wife. So what they will try to establish is that George Zimmerman was negligent in causing the death of Trayvon Martin. However, you have to remember that Florida has this stand your ground law, which brings with it some other complexities. Stand your ground can bring immunity civilly, so it could completely get rid of the civil liability for George Zimmerman, but with it, within the provisions of stand your grounds, there's some risks to the Martin family. George Zimmerman, if he is found, if the stand your ground applies, there actually could be attorney's fees. He could collect attorney's fees from the Martins. So there's a risk for the Martins bringing a civil lawsuit against George Zimmerman.
And Zimmerman's attorney himself has said that there may be lawsuits filed the opposite direction.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the civil rights and the federal issue, because there's a lot of emotions going here. NAACP is calling on the federal prosecutors to do something about this. What are the chances there?
Well, the chances are probably that they won't do it. They'll look at it, they'll review it, but to try to go civilly against Zimmerman is going to be difficult. First of all, it's not without, as she indicated, it risks. What is there to gain from this? Is it just to appease the public outcry? Because this should not be public opinion driven. Cases need to be decided whether they're going to be prosecuted or brought rationally, doing a cost-benefit analysis, whether it makes sense to advance that cause. And in this case, it really doesn't. I know that people are upset. They feel that Mr. Martin was profiled, that being a young black man in America comes with all kinds of risk, and you shouldn't be followed and shot just because you're a young black man in America. And that's absolutely right. But what we need to do is have policy or laws which change people's behavior and then allow them to change their opinion versus trying to build this on the back of one empirical example.
What about the law in Florida that basically got Zimmerman off? Do you think that'll be approached, that'll be changed in any way whatsoever in the state of Florida?
Well, it could. They can change law, but they can't change the Constitution. You have a right as a criminal defendant to make sure that there's evidence of such an amount, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So if there's doubt, then you must be found not guilty. And that law, that constitutional grounds, that's not going to be changed.
That won't change. Whether or not they change the stand your ground, but that wasn't even argued. So that's something that people keep addressing, but it's such a red herring because that wasn't even used in this criminal portion of the case.
All right. both of you, I'll ask this question. So for George Zimmerman, you think he walks from here and there will be no further prosecution? What are your thoughts?
In terms of what the NAACP is doing right now, I think the Department of Justice is essentially trying to, and I hate to say appease the public, but I really think that's what is going on. We had 3 million tweets in 2 hours of the verdict for George Zimmerman. People are obviously upset, but the standard to prove it's essentially a hate crime is what the NAACP is trying to get the Department of Justice to do. The standard is so high, I don't think it'll happen. We'll see about civilly whether or not the Martins want to bring on this case.
Gretchen, your thought?
Yeah, absolutely the same. This just, while the department is looking to say, okay, people, we're going to look into it, we're going to see if this is going on or not, it's going to be very difficult for them to show this. And then are they going to want to get into this mess again, then have him found not to be liable and have even more of a problem? I don't think they want to go there.
All right, Gretchen says, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jay.